Hello again, my name's Gavin. Welcome to my general English videos on behalf of Gate English Training School. This is lesson 5 in our series of general topic English. And the topic we are looking at today for lesson 5 is family. So the good news maybe for some of you who might be interested is I'm going to have lots of photos of my family here. I don't know why, but a lot of students I've had in China are quite interested to see my family photos. So we're going to talk about family. Quite a common topic, of course, for obvious reasons. So here is one of my family photos. As you can see, there's me, my sister, my mum, my aunt, my mum's partner, my uncle, and my cousin. Now, in my family, just to tell you at the beginning, when I was 12 years old, my mother and father separated. My mother has never married again, so you can say he is my mum's boyfriend, but they've been together for 24 years. They've been together. So can't call him my stepdad. So I have my mother's family and my father's family, the two different sides. So I'm very open to talk about these things. I hope my family don't mind. In fact, I hope my family never see these videos. Basic conversation to get started. And I'm not even going to ask the question, why is this an important topic? I think you all know why this is an important topic. So first of all, how many people are there in your family? Now, generally for a lot of people, this is a pretty easy question. There's 3 people in my family, my mum, my dad, and I, especially if you're a high school student or a university student. Maybe your grandparents live with you, or you have a brother or sister. The main thing is generally we're saying how many people are in your close family, the people you live with. Now, in my situation, I live with my wife when I'm not in Australia, so I have my father's family over here, my mother's family over there, my wife's family. So for me, that's actually a very difficult question to answer. How many people are there in your family? So I generally say, I could say, let's have a think. There's my mum, my dad, my stepmom, my mum's boyfriend, my older sister, my younger sister. Then there's me and, well, my wife. So there's 8 people in my family, but that's quite a difficult question. Once you are married and you've left your parents, it's kind of more difficult. For younger people, easy question. There's 3 people, or there's 5 people in my family, my parents, my younger brother, my older sister, and I. What do you do with your family? So what do you like to do when you hang out with your family? As always for these questions, after I ask the question, pause the video, practice your answer, then listen to your answer compared to mine. Okay, so what do you do with your family? Well, when I meet my father, we either go to watch rugby league, my favorite sport, or play golf. And of course, sometimes we just have a coffee or lunch. So we usually play golf or watch sport together. With my mother, I generally just sit and talk or go for a walk to the beach or to the park and just, talk and have a chat. We don't generally do anything special together. And that's the same thing with my sisters. You normally just meet for a coffee or a talk or a dinner. We don't really do any special things together. Maybe if you're younger and you have cousins the same age as you, maybe you play sport together. Maybe you go to the movies together. Okay, how often do you see your parents? Well, if you are a student in high school or middle school, probably a lot. You might say, I see my parents every day because I live with them. Or maybe I see my parents every weekend because from Monday to Friday, I stay at my dormitory at school and then go home for the weekend. Now, in my situation, this is more difficult. I would say lately I see my father once or twice a month because it's over 2 hours to drive down to where my father lives in Sydney. And at the moment, because it's still cold in Sydney and where I live in Australia, I only see my mum Oh, I haven't seen my mum since May. So I haven't seen my mum for about 5 months because she doesn't like cold weather. Every winter in Australia, she drives north to spend winter in the warm part of Australia. So between May and November, I don't see my mum, although I did speak to her yesterday. Um, which person in your family do you get on best with? I'd probably say I get on best with my mum because we can pretty much talk about anything. We're both very talkative people, and we're quite open to talk about relationships and life and work and everything else without feeling uncomfortable. Maybe the person you get on best with is a brother or a cousin. Oh, by the way, please remember that brother and sister means you have the same mother and father, or at least one. I have two sisters. One of my sisters we have the same father, but not the same mother. So she is what we call half sister. We have half sister. You could have a step sister when your parents, or maybe your father marries another woman and she already has children. That would be a step brother or sister. That person is your stepmother. We will look at that in a moment. Now, cousin means the people that your aunt and uncle's children. Now, I know in China it's common in Chinese to talk about your brother and sister when you actually mean to say cousin. But in English, we don't do this. It doesn't work that way. Well, I have two sisters and I have four cousins. They're completely different family members, and we talk about them as completely different family members. So in English, you can't use the word brother or sister to talk about your cousins. It doesn't work in English. Okay, so maybe you get on best with one of your parents, or maybe it's one of your brothers, your sisters, or your cousin. Okay, let's have a look at that family tree. Now, take a moment to look at this and think about all of this and see if you understand. So say this is me or you, and you have a brother and a sister. You have your parents, or in my situation, my father has married another woman. That would be my stepmother. Okay, if my father married her boyfriend, that would be my stepfather. If my stepmother already had other children before she married my father, they would be my stepbrothers and sisters. If you've ever seen the movie or read the book Cinderella, the famous story of the poor girl who has the evil stepmother and her stepsisters who make her do all the hard work. Of course, we have our grandparents, our grandmother and our grandfather, or grandpa, grandma. In Australia, we often call grandfather Pop. Now, that can change a little bit from country to country. Now, people often say, oh, but you don't have a different word for your father's father and your mother's father. Whereas I know in Chinese, you have different words for these people. In English, we would just say, oh, he's my grandfather on my father's side. He's my uncle on my father's side. Or if you say, oh, he's my uncle. Which uncle? Oh, my mother's brother. Or I might even say, oh, my mother's sister's husband. We also call him uncle. So, for example, I have two uncles, but one of my uncles is my father's brother. In fact, this is actually my family. My father has one brother. My mother has one sister. So she is married to my uncle. And my uncle on my father's side is married to my aunt. Okay, so it gets a little bit complicated there. Sister-in-law means they have married. So my sister is married. Her husband is my brother-in-law. So, and my wife is my sister's sister-in-law. So in-law means through marriage. So my wife's mother is my mother-in-law. Okay, and my parents are my wife's parent-in-laws. So in-law just means they've been with your family because they married somebody in your family. Okay. Now, cousin, like we can see, the children of our aunt and uncle, whether a boy or a girl, we call them cousin. We don't have a special word. Normally, we will just then explain, oh, my cousin, she's 3 years younger than me. we'll just use the she to let people know. If you have children, you have a son and a daughter. Again, if your children get married, so I would be my wife's mother's son-in-law. Okay. And of course, if your children have children, they are your grandchildren, your grandson, your granddaughter. Oh, it's quite complicated, but actually, I know that compared to a Chinese family tree, it's actually a lot simpler because we don't have all the different words for cousins and all the different words for grandmother and different words for uncle. I know that in my wife's family, I know that you have, oh, well, I know for example, my wife's mother, we have Dajo, Arjo, Laojo, we have Dagu, I've forgotten. Dashu, Laoshu, Arshu, all the different ones I can't remember. And so you have a lot more words in Chinese than we have in English. So really, this should be a bit easier for you if you are Chinese watching this video. So let's have a think. If my mother's sister's mother, so my mother's sister's mother is my grandmother. My father's brother's child would be my cousin. My sister's child, if it's a boy, is my nephew. My brother's child, if they're a daughter, is my niece. Okay, so nephew and niece there. My sister's husband is my brother-in-law. My father's second wife is my stepmother. My wife's mother is my mother-in-law. Okay, so if you have any questions about that, if you're not sure, please ask. As always, at the end of these videos, we ask that question, do you have any questions? So it can be about the vocabulary, about family, or even just, your opinions about the different family trees between the way we speak about family in English and the way you speak about family in your language, whether it's Chinese or any other language. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start talking about our family. So what I'd like you to do is to get some photos of your family. Maybe you have them around your home. Maybe you have them on your phone or on your computer. And I want you to practice talking about your family. And also, when you say visit a friend's home and they have some family photos on the wall, you might ask them kind of questions. Oh, who's that? Where was that photo taken? What were you doing in this photo? Oh, is that you? Questions like this. So when you visit somebody's home, normally people do have family photos on the wall. It's a very common thing to have photos of your family at home. Your friends come to visit. You show them around your home and they might say, oh, wow, is that your family? Is that your mum? Questions like this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk you through some of my family photos here. And I'm very sorry again to my family who are in these pictures. And hopefully you can do the same. You can practice. So listen to me. Listen to the way I talk about my family and about these photos, and then try to use the same language with your photos at home. So let's have a look. In this picture, there is one photo of me. So have a think if you can see which photo you think is me. Let's think. Well, first of all, you might be surprised. I now have dark hair, dark beard. But actually, when I was a child, I had blonde hair. I was very fair-haired when I was a baby. This is me here. So actually, it's quite common in for Western people who come from European countries to have blonde hair when we're young, but the hair gets darker as we get older. Okay, so this is a photo of me. In fact, I'm not even sure if this is me or not. But because this is my aunt and my mother. Okay, but let's start with the oldest photo here. So let's go back to this photo. So Who's that? Well, let me tell you an interesting story about my family.